I'll start to record now. يعطيكم العافية شباب. Today we're going to continue discussing Greek civilization. And when we talk about Greek civilization, this includes Greek talking about or discussing Greek city-state, Greek democracy, Greek history, writings, for example, and Greek philosophy, the thing that we discussed last time, and Greek mythology. Also, we discussed it last time. In general, what is mythology? Now, I know that you took this PowerPoint presentation, but maybe this time you have to go back. I'm going to relate something for you. So you have to go back to different sites that I will, you can see here. You can take notes now and depend on record this recording, of course, when you want to study. We'll talk about ancient Greece, Sparta, Athens, and the age of Pericles, and we'll talk about city of Greece and in general, and we'll talk about Greek democracy, Greek history, and Greek mythology, Greek philosophy. Okay, different things. Now let's start with European civilization. We'll talk about Greece, ancient Greece here. As you know, European civilization, as one of the best thinkers in history, who's called Toynbee, if you heard about this name, Arnold Toynbee. Toynbee, even in Arabic they write it, Toynbee, very famous historian and thinker. Toynbee, he said that he developed in the European civilization developed the body of what we call a Greek society, like a child in the womb. This is how he described it. So he thought about a Greek, ancient Greece and European civilization. It's like a child in the womb. It's like the seeds of this Western civilization, let's say. So civilization which flourished in ancient Greece is the mother of the modern European civilization, and the whole Europe is indebted to Greece, as this is his idea, Toynbee. Now, geographically, I can see that you can tell that the Greek peninsula is situated to the south of Europe on the Mediterranean Sea, and the mainland of Greece is surrounded by, as you can see, also the number of islands. Please, can you please all mute your phones, your microphones, please? And the mountains and the bays had divided Greece into different regions. Now, in the ancient period, each region could maintain its separate identity and developed in its own way, of course. And you can see also that as most of the lands were not fertile agriculture, could not make progress, there in Greece, except in plains situated between the mountains. That's geographically speaking. Now, second, concerning geography, you can say that the climate of Greece is excellent, of course, for health. And it is neither very hot nor very cold, and naturally people feel comfortable there in the climate. The climate made also the people active and hard workers. Climate affects working and people's health. And of course, at the same time, it helped in the development of their mental faculties. So it helped them to a great extent, let's say. Now, also, you can say that a number of natural harbors were surrounded by the sea coast of Greece, And these harbors have helped the growth of what we call maritime and maritime trade. It helped them ultimately, and it helped in the economic prosperity of the people also. Now, these geographical factors contributed greatly to the growth of Greek civilization. Now, what about the ancient, what we call ancient and early civilization? You know, about 2000 to 500 BC. What we call the Aryans. The Aryans entered the main land of Greece, and of course from the northern side, and they entered into Greece in different groups. But long before the Aryan migration to what we call the Aegean civilization, it flourished there in the island of Aegean Sea. And this can be called also the first civilization of Europe, if you want, which is the Aegean with an Aegean, okay, Aegean civilization. That was the first. Some people consider it as the first civilization of Europe. And this was also the first developed, let's say, civilization in the island of Crete, in the Aegean Sea, that was called later on the Cretan, according to Crete, the Cretan civilization. So different words, different names referring to that. And of course, the rulers in the island of Crete were called also Minos, and the civilization was also called upon that Minon civilization. So another name that you may face in history, Minon civilization, that's referring to the Greece or Greek. And this was also named, there's another name, which is the Mycenaean civilization. And Mycenaean civilization, it was called after the city called Mycenae, okay? Or Mycenae, it depends on the way they pronounce it. And it was built in Cretans, by the Cretans, of course. Now, what we call the Aegean civilization was the product of we can say it's the product of the influence of the Egyptian, because we'll talk later on about Alexander the Great, and the Assyrian, what we call them the Assyrian civilization. Now, the people of this civilization used the picture writing of the Egyptians, and of course the Sumerians finally developed the alphabets later on, as you may know. So they used the Egyptian writings and the Sumerian development of alphabets. That was the beginning, and they made various kinds of potteries, let's say. And the marine trade there, as I told you, was the main occupation of the people. Also, agriculture at that time was not, and that area was not so popular. So the people, or the migrants, the Aryan migrants, they defeated the Cretans, and they spread throughout Greece. And there they picked up the main features of the Aegeans civilization, and built up a new, what we call a new civilization, called later on the Greek civilization. So this is all an introduction that I mentioned now till we reach the Greek civilization. But if you heard the words that I mentioned before, they all refer to the ancient Greek civilization. Now, this Greek civilization, as I told you, according to Toynbee, the philosopher and the historian, is the mother of the European civilization. Now, we go back to the Aryans who entered Greece, into Greece in different groups, And among them were what we call them the Achaeans, okay, and another group called the Thessalians, another group called the Butians, another group called Phocians and Dorians. They are all famous groups who went into and spread into Greece, and some of them crossed the sea and settled down in Asia. And of course, one of the groups, which is called Ionians, they were most famous among those who settled down in Asia. In Asia. And probably during this period, Greeks were known that the Greeks destroyed the city of Troy. I'm sure you know the city of Troy, or they call it in Arabic Torwada, okay, in Asia Minor, they call it, okay. And this was formed through the theme, or that formed the theme of Aryans, who called themselves, who have a very famous epic, okay, which is called the Iliad and Homer, or what in Arabic is called الملحمة اللي هي اسمها الإلياذة وهوميروس, okay. It refers to them. And in the later periods, the Aryans called themselves Hellenes, أو in Arabic they call it الفترة الهيلينية أو الهيلينستيكية. Okay, they say it this way in Arabic. And their country, I'm just referring to the words in Arabic in case you read something about them in Arabic literature or in history. Now, Homer's and Iliad and the Odyssey, of course, three very famous epics, were written in the 7th century BC. And these two epics are regarded as the beginning of European literature. So I'm sure if you are taking a course in European literature, you cannot but, hear about very two famous epics, Iliad and Odyssey, that refer to Homer. Now, the Iliads deal with the war. Okay, so what is Iliad about? It's our Iliada in Arabic. It deals about or with war between Spartans and Troy. So حرب بين طروادة وأهل Sparta. And that was in the what we call the Homeric age. It refers to the person who's known for that, Homer. And the Iliad, as I said, Helen is the wife of Spartan king. So she is a famous famous woman who is the wife of Spartan king who was called Menelaus. He was carried away by Paris. Paris is the name of prince of Troy. So the Spartans, in order to recover Helen, they besieged and destroyed Troy. This was the problem in history here. It also narrates that they exploit the legendary Greek hero that was called, or who was called Achilles or Achilles. It depends on the way it's pronounced in Greece. In the Trojan War, Harb Torwada. Okay. Now the Odyssey deals with the adventure of the Odysseus on his homeward journey from Trojan, referring to the Trojan War. Sorry. Now from these epics, we can have a glimpse of the Greek society. And the Greek society before, of course, when you say about a Greek society here, we are referring to 700 BC. Okay, we are referring to the era or time of 700 BC. Therefore, this period was called at that time the Homeric age, our Asr Homerus. Now, in Greece, the Aryans, they gave up their, what is called the nomadic character, and adopted agriculture as their main occupation. So this what made them more civilized, let's say. In the beginning, they were divided into small groups, and each group under a king that was assisted by a council of elders. So there is a council that helps or aids the king, let's say. Now, you can see also that the council here, that in the beginning they were divided in small groups, and each each one is under an assistant, let's say, council headed by a king, and they worshipped a number of what we call deities. One of them is Zeus and Apollo and Athena, who were very famous. And of course, I mentioned last time the mountain of, or the mount of Mount Olympia, referring to the Olympiads, okay, that was regarded as the main place to be referred to in worshipping. And we have also, they had a belief that in the oracles or divine revelations, they believed in divine, what is called divine revelations. Revelation, it's like al-wahi, okay, but a divine revelation. So the oracles with a capital O here, the oracles of Delphi, they were where most of important characters in Greek history. These were consulted before each military expedition, and they took their consultation before taking important decisions. So this is why it is known at that time. Now, in a later period, the Greeks became, great mariners, let's say, and through their competition with the Phoenicians, or in Arabic they called them Al-Finiqiyin, okay, they gradually, colonized, let's say, the Grecia, what is called Grecia, and the Greater Greece, what is called Greater. Yeah, Grecia is Greater Greece. Okay, the same meaning. Now, and this, of course, the increase of the population and the scarcity of food, along with the oppression of the nobles, that made what is called the poor Greeks, to settle down in their colonies. So we have different, let's say, reasons for that. Now let's talk about the city-states. The city-states, and here we can take the notes from here, the city-state itself. But the word here, not only city, I would like to add to it the word state, as I gave you last time. The word state. They used to use the word states. Okay. Now, to go back to the idea of city-states, now, and it's important, an important feature of the Greek civilization was the growth of city-states, as I said last time. And in the mainland of Greece, there are many mountains and rivers and bays, as you can see. And therefore, the Greeks started their habitation in isolation, okay? That different groups lived in different places, and there was no, easy communication between them. The peculiar, geographical condition of the land made them separated and isolated, unfortunately. And maybe that gave them a lot of time to think about certain things. And this is what created how the atmosphere and the conditions of philosophical thinking was raised. Now, so the idea of one homogeneous state could not develop in that area in the minds of the people. As I told you, Athens was so different from Sparta in mentality. In Athens, we have the philosophic thinkers philosophic thinkers, but while in Sparta it's more military, as I told you. Now, each group established in its own city-state in a particular what we call locality, and each state had a city or at the center. Now, as the state developed around a city, it was called a city-state. So it's a state around a city. Okay, you can imagine it this way: a state around a city. So this is why it's called a city-state. Now, each city-state developed what we call in its own way. The Greeks were loyal, for example, to their own city-states, and even prepared to sacrifice their life for it. Okay, now they did not have any what we call allegiance to the country as a whole. So it's only to the city-state, and this is very, important, and also I can say problematic in a way. Now, the Greeks were loyal, as I said, to their own city-states, and even prepared to sacrifice their life to it, or life for it. And they did not have any allegiance, as I said, to the country as a whole. But of course, by time, the inhabitants of each city-state thought themselves as a separate race. So they were as if they are classified in a separate race, or from a separate race. And at the center of each city-state, there was what we call the fort of the king on a hill. Okay, and it was surrounded by the villages on the plains. Now, each city-state was protected by a wall. You can imagine that it was protected by a wall, and a place was demarked for the common meeting ground of the people. So there is a special common meeting ground for them, and in that place, the king and the council, of course, used that to meet and to take important decisions. Now, there was a council, or what we call as an assembly, and that was the beginning of what we have nowadays as parliaments, okay, because democracy started there as an idea. Now, the assembly to carry out the administration of the city-states, okay. Now, we have what we call the nobles, النبلاء, طبقة النبلاء, the nobles, or what they call them as the eupatrids. Okay, at the time they formed the council. Whereas the assembly consisted of poor citizens. So the council is different from the assembly. The assembly is made of poor citizens, while the council is made of maybe the elite of them. Now, each city-state was ruled independently. So we have the independence, the idea of independence in politics was from that time, and it was not, controlled, but they were, governed in that way. So it's very complicated in politics here. It collected taxes from the citizens, and they declared war, unfortunately, but at the end it was concluded by peace with other city-states. Okay, until all their rules are accepted. Now, in this way, the city-states grew up in their own way, and even the social and religious life of people differed to a great extent because of that. Now, there was no unity among them. The Greeks were loyal to their own state, and consequently, the whole of Greece was neglected as a whole. Now, and that was the problem. So another feature was what we call the struggle, the struggle, let's say, among the city-states, and they were fighting with each other for what we call supremacy. Okay, supremacy, which is السيطرة. Okay, now supremacy, of course, and you know that the Spartans are well prepared for that because it is military. Now, and this was the weakened, you know, or this was the weakness, or this what weakened the very foundation of Greece. That was the problem. Now, however, there was a thread of unity which bound the whole Greek race. And the first and foremost bond of union was the Greek language. As always, we said last time that language helps in culture, helps in understanding. It's what we say, it's the way that we can understand each other and accept each other. So the Greek language was the common thing between them that made them bond for union. Now, in spite of the growth of the local dialects, of course, every language has its dialects. The Greeks have different dialects of different city-states. They exchange their ideas through the Greek, what we call the Greek language. And secondly, they also had a common religious belief. So we have what is common between them, language and religious belief. Now, the people who are called the Amphicians, they have this is a certain group. They have the religious councils, and they looked after the maintenance of the Greek temples. They had temples, and also they organized what we call common festivals. And these councils were attended by the Greeks of different city-states. And here you should also remember that the Iliad and the Odyssey of Homer were regarded as the common property of the Greeks. So these are the common things that they share as culture, okay? Now the description of the exploits of Greek heroes, as you know, we have the idea of Greek, we have heroes here that were discussed in the epics, okay? They provided a strong sense of unity to the Greeks. So this is also another common ground, let's say. So it's language, religion, and epics. It's very important here. Now, another thing is that, as I told you last time, the Olympic Games. The Olympic Games were another important unifying factor, let's say. So these are unifying factors. Now, these games were held in each, let's say, 4th year. So every 4 years, at a place that is called Olympia, as I told you before, and all Greeks participated in these games, and the council that was controlled, that used to control the games, was also represented by all Greeks, to be fair enough, of course. Now, finally, we can tell here that, to build on that the Greeks thought themselves superiors to the people living outside Greece. So this is a problem in politics that you will see, as Germans nowadays in late history. We know that Germans think that they are superior, but before it wasn't the first people who think of themselves as superiors. We have also a Greek, okay, Greek people. Now, although they have their own conflicts within. Now, the Greek, of course, this led to something very important, that the people, it reflects the way of living. It reflects that Greeks were held themselves as, according to others, they were uncivilized and barbarous. And that was known not because of Athens, that was known because of Sparta, and because the way they thought or they think of themselves as superiors. And this idea also, in a way, it inoculated it formed in the mind of themselves as strong people, and as if they have a strong sense of what they called here the national unity. So from that time, that was the first time, let's say, in history and in philosophy, the idea of union and unity was raised in their thinking. Now, in spite of these unifying factors, of course, the Greeks failed to establish a nation state of their own. And at times of, city-states formed, they formed what is called confederation. So again, in history, that was the first time the idea of confederation raised. And in Arabic also we say confederaliye, which is kind of a coalition, okay, between parts and units. And, but that did not last for a long time. And among the city-states, Sparta and Athens were most important. And we have different city-states, but Sparta and Athens were the most famous. Now, both Sparta and Athens, they differed widely in character, as I said, completely different. And to the contrary, let's say. Now, Spartans laid more, let's say, emphasis on physical, they were very working or emphasizing on the physical development, whereas the Athenians, they emphasized on the mental development. Okay, so we have the physical and the mental development. Now, the mental development, we talk about philosophy here, okay? Physical, we talk about military action. Now, the former, they glorified war, which is, which is Spartan, and the later, which is Athenians, they emphasized the need to develop the finer aspects of life. And of course, Sparta became the center of heroism. It's, when you say Sparta, you think of heroism. And Athens was looked at as the center of Greek culture. So when we say Greek culture, okay, we know that we have Sparta in our mind as military in aspect, but of course you have to think directly of culture, you think of philosophy. So you are talking about Athens, not Sparta. Now, let's talk about Sparta. What is Sparta? Now, Sparta, when we talk about a group of, people who were called Dorians, they migrated to the southern part of Greece, and they settled down in a place called Peloponnesus. Okay, it's Greek name of a place that they migrated to, and they established there a city that was called Sparta. Now they brought the local people under their control, and they oppressed them. And of course, being oppressed, the people of what we call Peloponnesus, they revolted against the invaders because they treated them as their invaders. And in order to meet the opposition of the people of Peloponnese, now the Dorians, they formulated a set of rules. That set of rules made them, physically powerful. And these rules laid emphasis on what we call physical exercises and sports and warfare. So when we think of Sparta, we think of physical exercises and sports and warfare. Okay. Now in Sparta, as you know, only healthy and good-looking children were accepted. As I told you last time, it wasn't allowed if children are not healthy and good-looking, they were not allowed to live. Okay. Now each newborn baby or born child was examined by experts. Okay, you can imagine that. And if the child was found weak and deformed, he or she, but they concentrate on he or on people on male gender as more than women. Okay, they were exposed to die, unfortunately, on the top of the hill. Can you imagine that? How barbarous they were and uncivilized? Now, the Spartans believed that only healthy children could become great soldiers. Only health, so referring to their health, only them can be soldiers in the future. And women were asked to bear strong and healthy children. So if not, they are not accepted. For this, they were required to undertake regular physical exercises like the males, but only as what? As holding in their womb. Okay, for the age, so there was in a way you can think of that as anti-feminists. Okay, now from the age and we discussed this later, from the age of 7, from that age, the age of 7, if you refer to boys, was required to stay in military camps. Can imagine that the beginning, the age of 7, this is very, very early, right? The age of 7 was required for boys to stay in military camps, to begin treating them and exercising them, right? To work on exercises, physical exercises, to treat them as soldiers to be, right? As projects for having a soldier. Now, where they were given also military training for 12 years. So their study was military, okay, if you want to talk about schools here and teaching. Now, in the camps, they used to undergo all kinds of, tortures, thinking that in order to make them, accept, painstaking and hard living as the life of soldiers. Now, even some of them, some of those children, they may die. So they die. Some of them died because of torture or because of severe treatment. The boys that couldn't stand it, and boys in the military camps, they remained far from all kinds of amusements. So very hard military life and tough military life, and of course no enjoyment. And the Spartans did not have any inclination towards education and learning concerning mental things as Athens, only physical. Okay, so after the military training, they were forced to work in the army up till the age of 60. Can you imagine that? From 7 to 60, not 16, 60. Imagine that, so hard. And in the army, they were required to undergo extreme hardship and observe very strict discipline. Now, in this way, the Spartan life was hard and rude, and the entire state looked like a military camp, and family life was forbidden. Of course, they have no time. It's only military. It was forbidden to people, and their life was dry. You can imagine that, and devoid of enjoyment, and they could not, of course, let's say, devote time to agriculture to make them civilized, or trade. And these works were left only to the slaves. So agriculture and trade was left to the slaves. At that time, they believed in slavery. So we have different parts of people, let's say, or classes of people. Now, on the other hand, this made the Spartans militarily strong, very strong, with an invincible army. So it's very difficult to defeat them. The Spartans preferred death to surrender. You can imagine that if you ever saw that film of Troy. And warriors, they were second to none. Okay, they were very famous. They were always busy in fighting with others, and for some time they succeeded in establishing what we call sway over other city-states. Okay, but they could not inspire others, of course, because they are not using their mental, thinking, and they did not inspire the Greeks as we are thinking of nowadays in terms of culture. And they were although they were, Greeks are so fond of art and philosophy and science, and that was only in terms of the Athens. Now the administration of Sparta was carried out by kings, and they have very popular assembly. And two kings ruled Sparta simultaneously. You can imagine that in terms of what we call administration. And the Sparta, they have two kings, as I said, each acting as, checking on the other. So they were competing in a way. Therefore, there was no scope for one becoming a tyrant or a dictator. So again, although it was military, but it was not a dictatorship. Okay. Further, it's also their powers were, greatly curtailed by appointment of a king who's called Efforts, and they were appointed by the popular assembly. This is very important. So this is democratic in a way. They have the power to arrest, and also to try, and to try the authority of the kings. Now, popular assembly consisted of people above 30. Now, so any people above 30 years of age, they were part of the assembly. They are accepted as part of the assembly, and this used to meet, they used it to meet each other each full moon. So they meet each full moon when the moon is full, each full moon day, and they had the power to declare, of course, war, and also to conclude peace. And this is very important. So wars and peace. This is a decision that refers to the assembly. But the assembly became more and more, aristocratic in nature, and because it was dominated by the nobles, as I told you. And also there was a council of elders. They called it Council of Elders. It consisted of 28 members, 28, okay? You can now think of parliaments. Parliaments nowadays, they used to have in the beginning 30 members, and then they were divided into different numbers. But at the beginning, it was 30. Maybe this is the reason, because it was in Greek literature and history, it was 28. Okay. Now, and towards the end of 66th century before Christ, the Peloponnese Confederation, this is how it was called, Peloponnese Confederation. It was formed in southern Greece under the leadership of Sparta. So they had, in the course of time, the Dorians invaders, they came to possess all the lands of Sparta later, and they reduced its original inhabitants into slaves, and they were called Helots, the Helots. Okay. Now the Helots formed the majority of in the society of Greek, but they did not have the political rights. Okay. Sorry. Now they were oppressed by the Dorians nobles, or the Dorian nobles, and therefore they revolted against the nobles. Now the Spartans are also remembered as in history. So they were remembered for their martial spirit, because of the military, efforts and work, for their heroism, for their, when we talk about nations and nationality, we talk about the patriotism of the Spartans and the sense of discipline and order. So this is the major, let's say, good things about it. Now, next time, I don't want now to talk about Athens. This is a completely different story. Next time, I'll talk about Athens. And I'll leave some time for you if you want to ask. What do you think? Because Athens needs another at least 1 hour. And I prefer to leave Athens and to discuss it later, because Athens is a different story, completely different story. It's the beginning here of philosophy and the idea of philosophical thinking and the history of thinkers, philosophical thinkers. So let me now, of course, now we can refer to that. Go back to the different sites here. You just write Greece city-states. Okay, you write ancient Greece, Sparta, Athens, and Age of Pericles. And you write a Greek democracy, and Greek history, Greek mythology, and Greek philosophy. Next time, I'll talk about Athens and Greek philosophy. Okay? Now, let me now stop the recording and